Hello, Paul. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I'm Xavier Leclerc. I'm the founder of Mox Digital, and I'm also a director of the French-Brazilian Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Paul, to Hacking Rio.
Hi, Xavier, and thanks for inviting me.
So the idea is to talk a little bit about how things went with COVID-19 in France. What was the response, and also to elaborate about the initiative that you led, because I heard that you managed to have initiatives in France, but also more broadly in other countries. I wanted to start with the fact that here in Brazil, French companies are the biggest employer of the country, the biggest foreign employer of the country, with more than 500,000 people in Brazil working for French companies. And we've seen a lot of initiatives related to collaboration, cooperation, solidarity. On the 14th of July, for your information, we organized a big lunch with a French chef in order to provide food for people who were needed. And a lot of companies invested in capacities in order to help foster the response. Have you seen a little bit the same thing in France, with companies being more involved with solidarity and helping related to the crisis?
Yes, I think so. I've been looking very closely at the situation both in France and in the United States. And in both cases, I think that there has been a major movement by civil society to step in. In particular, there is this feeling that we don't need to wait for the government to step in and provide everything, especially in times of crisis where you need to be responsive. You have this movement of people from civil society to say, okay, I can help. So we've seen this, for example, with makers who are building their own masks when we had the shortage of protective equipment. Same thing with respirators. And then, of course, digital companies have been really thinking about how we can build digital solutions to also help address the crisis. And I think there is this very interesting collaboration between citizens, between companies, and also between the government, to find a way to provide this kind of very rapid response that we need in a time of crisis.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because that's the very reason why we invited you, because you developed an app that helped fight the COVID-19. Just for your information, Lindalia Junqueira, who is at the origin of the Hacking Rio, she invited me and a lot of other people to be part of SOS COVID-19, in Portuguese, in order exactly to federate local initiatives from civil society, from tech entrepreneurs, from companies, in order to make it. And I would like, so that people know, I will share a little bit my screen. And can you talk a little bit more about Connectify?
Yes. So Connectify is a very simple tool that does a simple thing. So it's a tool that is used by people who have symptoms of COVID. So either they are confirmed or just have a suspicion of COVID. And then we help these individuals very easily remember who they may have met and potentially contaminated, and then send them a notification in just one click. And then the people who are notified will get a small coaching service that helps them take the right actions. So for example, get tested, make sure you take the right, take the right precautions. So for example, once you receive the message, you start monitoring your symptoms and so on and so forth. So it's really a digital version of the human contact tracing efforts that a lot of countries do, where, as you know, every time someone is diagnosed with COVID, you have someone who calls them and tries to investigate to see who else may be positive with COVID without knowing it yet. So we can call them and make sure that they don't spread the infection further. So that's the core logic of contact tracing. But the issue with contact tracing when you do it manually is that it's very, very, very time consuming. It takes a lot of resources. You need an army of people to do these phone calls. And obviously at the scale of COVID is very difficult. You know, in China, just in Wuhan, they hired 9,000 people just to do this work. In France, total, we had 100 people at the beginning of the crisis. So you see the mismatch here. And so the idea with Connectify is to provide the digital version of the contact tracing interview so that people can do it themselves.
And the fact that we speak together today is very much related to when we met in Paris about exactly this app that you developed with your association, because it's not a company, it's a NGO. And I like the fact there's a few buzzwords that you said, or keywords, that are very interesting, which are scale, obviously, and gaining speed. You already developed a version in Portuguese, am I right?
Yes, that's right.
So it's interesting to see how, based on a common entrepreneur look or a common maker feeling, where you have a problem where you can use technology in order to face it. And when we saw a little bit about what happened in France and in Europe, we saw that tech started to realize that they could do what they call the United Tech of Europe. Have you seen about this initiative? I guess so. So as you see on screen, you have France, Germany, Austria, Portugal, Poland. I know that for Hacking Rio, we will have in the international forum a lot of other talks related to these companies. And what is interesting is that they have been focusing on a few pain points that they could address. So the first one was very much related to the economic side of it. So that's what I try to focus on in this one, where you see the employment related issues and the funding, loans, grants. Because in Europe, in July, they made an historic deal where all the members of the European Union, they increased by 540 billion euros, the loan capacity, the collective loan capacity in order to face the economic crisis. And I would like to take the time that we have left for our talk in order to focus about the little bit about the initiatives for tomorrow. So can you talk a little bit more about your NGO, please?
Yes. So our NGO and Connectify is a product of this NGO. It's called Base Impact. And as the name suggests, our goal here is to create social impact through technology. So we're a nonprofit organization that builds technological solutions to social issues. And then what we do is we partner with governments, but also with companies to distribute these products and try to have the biggest impact possible. The core idea behind Base Impact is that we have, as a society, we face challenges that hit us on a very, very large scale. If you talk about COVID, it's something that matters to every single one of us. We have millions of cases around the world. If you talk about unemployment, just in France, we have 5 million unemployed people, and it's increasing, especially now in the post-COVID recession. And so you have these social issues that are here on a very large scale. And what we wanted to do is to find a way to help in a way that could match the scale. Because all of us were very, we do volunteering on the side, we try to help, but it's really hard to do something that goes beyond just helping fix a problem one by one. So the question is, how do we create something more systemic? How do we do something that can scale? And the short story, I mean, maybe a funny story.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
When I started Base Impact at the time, I was working in Silicon Valley as a data scientist. And as you may know, San Francisco is both a place where you have a huge amount of wealth creation. Everyone talks about how software is eating the world, about how we're going to change the world with algorithms. Even myself, in my day job, I was building algorithms for famous companies that reached millions of users. But on the other side, San Francisco is also one of the worst hotspots of homelessness in the United States. You have a lot of poverty alongside this wealth. And it's crazy because everyone in Silicon Valley says, okay, we're here to fix the world's biggest problem. We're here to create solutions at scale. But when we looked at social issues, the best you could do is to go to the soup kitchen and serve one soup at a time. So how is it that you have social issues that reach millions of people, but we only use scalable technologies when it comes about, when it's about making money?
And you're not taking care of what's happening at your door, kind of thing. And it's what was interesting for me when I joined SOS Covid-19, and also as part of the Chamber of Commerce, I spoke with a lot of companies, is that in Brazil, they have been very focused about what's the local impact you can have. As you may know, Brazil is the 5th most unequal country in the world. It's one of the largest economy in the world, and you have a lot of wealth creation, also a lot of very rich people. But what was interesting is that related to Covid-19, so COVID-19, depending how you say it, we see that it's interesting to understand that they are not just focusing on how large the impact you can have, but also how you can locally help the people. And for instance, WhatsApp has been a tool that has been used very much in order to spread the initiatives, in order to federate the people. Have you seen the response different in the various countries, and more specifically in France?
I think you're right that there is this increased focus in local impact. And I would say COVID-19 is maybe novel in this respect because very often we hear about big health crisis
abroad, like in
and COVID is really something that really hits every single one of us. We all know people who have had COVID, and unfortunately some of them were gravely ill or even died. And I think that there is definitely this bigger conscience that we can do something. But I think it's also an opportunity to for people to realize that it's also very important to give back to the community, because you see a very clear connection between the work that you do and the people that you can help around you.
Related to that, the World Economic Forum just released in July a study called The Great Reset, how digital transformation is providing an opportunity where, related to this crisis, basically the sake is that companies are facing societal impact and issues that they have to face, and the digital transformation for new business models, so on and so forth. And in May, Fortune magazine said that $1.2 trillion has been invested by companies for digital transformation, but just 13% of the CEOs feel that they are digital ready or ready for the new digital world. So now that we talked a little bit about how COVID has been phased, what are the response, and for all those who will have a look, we will send the link to Connectify in Portuguese, because unfortunately, we still have a very big issue in Brazil, and that your application can help. Thank you very much. How do you see this collaboration happening between civil societies, companies, and the states?
Yeah. And by the way, it just makes me think about also on your previous question, one of the core reasons why we built Connectify in the first place is actually because we had people on our team who were positive with COVID, and for some of them, they caught it from someone who knew they had COVID but did not want their friends. They got infected a few days ago at a birthday party, but because the person did not notify the
spread it
of the party, sometimes it had some very bad consequences. Like some of our team members we had municipal elections in France. Some of them went door-on-door campaigning, and so just a simple message would have helped potentially avoid tens or even hundreds of contaminations. It's really right that you feel it locally. But sorry, back to your question. I think So there's a really big opportunity here for collaboration between different types of players that usually don't really work together. So for example, for Connectify, we just did a partnership with Minha Vida in Brazil, so that Minha Vida, who has a lot of traffic, can also recommend those who go on their website and take, for example, they take an online COVID symptom checker. If they test positive, then they can get referred to Connectify. So we've already seen some forms of collaboration with between civil society and our NGO and companies. And I think this is something that is going to be very, very important in the future. As you mentioned, WhatsApp is also very, I mean, everything happens on WhatsApp. So there's many other type of private companies where we think that we can partner to have a big impact. And then in terms of states, well, it depends on the country by country basis, but the state has a very unique power to generalize a solution. And so the way I see it, governments are often a bit slower to respond, but it's not always a bad thing, because sometimes they have to be more conservative because governments are less risk seeking, right? They want to make sure something is really tested before scaling it up. And this is where civil society has an opportunity to move very fast. We can hack things, right? We can try things. Some things won't work. This is very important for innovation. Some things will work. Then we can scale them up together with companies. And then once we feel that something is ready, has proven its impact, this is where there is an opportunity to further generalize it with government. So for example, what if we worked with the government so that every single person who has a positive test at the testing center has to be referred to some of, to one of these initiatives, right? This is something that has a lot of impact, but obviously
it takes time to implement. And the generalization of the process is what is interesting. When you say you're able with digital solution to scale, the state has the capacity to scale by law or by addicting things, which is an opportunity. It's different, it's slower, but it's a bit more general. What I would be interested in is more specifically for the people who watch it, how has France dealt with it, and how do you rate, I would say, the way it is being done, not just for Connectify, not just for COVID-19, but on a more general process about GovTech, about using technology as a government, and what are the efforts being made in France? I saw on your site that you've been working also on employment issues that are quite relevant, because unfortunately, as you may not know, or as you may know, Brazil is facing an employment issue where we have already more than 12 million unemployed people. So can you please explain that?
Yes. So it's hard for me to rate government response.
Evaluate, not rate.
But I definitely think things are changing in the right direction.
Okay.
So we come from a model where, especially in France, it's very top down. So when you talk about government response, everything is very centralized. In tech, we have this saying, the "not invented here" syndrome, and the French government really has this at a very high stage, right? Things are changing, so there is a lot more openness to outside innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas before, every single thing that you did, took years to do, and France has a history of launching multi-billion-dollar plans. Like something in French called the plan calcul. And when France decides we're going to go do digital transformation, we have this huge multi-billion-dollar plan to be executed over 5 to 10 years. And obviously it doesn't work because it's not very agile. So things have changed and progressed, thankfully, since then. But there is still a lot of progress to be done. I would say that the positive is that we have a lot more outside innovation, a lot more startups, a lot more people from civil society who do things. So the ecosystem of technological and social innovation in France is very, very different. Where we still need to progress is precisely in what you were saying earlier, is how do we take these initiatives and scale them up? And so here, I would say in France, it's still not quite in the culture. We did the first step. So we have this ecosystem of innovation, but then we have this tendency of reinventing the wheel. So when something works, we say, oh, okay, I guess this works. So we're going to do a big, we need to create, to rewrite 100 pages long specs, and then we're going to bid them out, and maybe in 5 years we're going to have an official government version of this thing that's happening.
It's interesting what you're saying, because it's we're often seen as a very engineer-based society. So we have a lot of big engineer-based companies, a lot of them in the Fortune 500. I'm thinking about Total and others like that. And what caught my attention when we met, you talked about being one of the few NGOs participating to Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about this experience? Because like you said, in the Valley, entrepreneur is king, but it seems to slowly also move. Their needle is slowly moving. What's your take on that?
So, well, you may be familiar with Y Combinator. So one of the main tech incubators in Silicon Valley. So when we participated, so it was in summer 2014, there were 100 startups in the batch at Y Combinator, and we were the only NGO. There was actually a funny story here, which is that a lot of people were asking us, okay, what is it like to be an NGO in a non-profit at Y Combinator? And someone replied, well, you know, I don't think base impact is that different, because at this stage, no one is making profits. So all the startups are no profits. You're just a non-profit.
You have one letter more.
And so I thought it was quite true. I would say there is one big thing that it has helped us do is very traditionally NGOs and generally in the social sector. I think there is a lot of good intentions, and a lot of people do a lot of great work, but there is less emphasis on trying to scale it. And one thing we learned at Y Combinator is that there are some good things to take about the startup approach. So creating a world-class team, trying to hire the best, being relentless about trying to scale your impact as opposed to your revenue. But you still have the same idea of you have to have a laser focus on some very specific topics, and then run with it and try to and really try to continuously improve. And one thing we have been obsessed with, I guess, is the idea of, instead of creating a unicorn, like everyone's talking about trying to create a new Facebook, a new Google, how do we create the new, maybe the new Red Cross, right? How do we create the new generation of NGOs that scale globally? One short anecdote, and I know that I don't have unlimited time, but when you look at the top companies by valuation, a good fraction of them actually for example, in NASDAQ and Fortune 500, all technology companies. A big portion of the most valuable companies have been created in the last 30 years. When you look at the main nonprofits in the world, the average date of creation is 1904. So there's a lot less movement in
Interesting.
In the world. And so my whole work with Base Impact has been trying to find a way to bridge the gap between the technology sector, where you have a bit of innovation, also a lot of ambition, but also the social sector, where obviously it's better to try to create a lot of impact when it comes about the health or employment crisis.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I've perceived that plastic is one of the themes where I have seen a lot of startup NGOs. So like you said, technology-based initiatives, tech-based initiatives, where they're trying to have impact, they're trying to scale, they're trying to face it. You were saying about how Y Combinator helped you having laser focus, hire top-notch people. It reminded me of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where they tried to face malaria by pouring money it wasn't working, and then they said they were pouring money, getting the best brains, and they started to see results. That's an interesting point that I actually never focused about, how NGOs are not antiquated, are very much based on a model that didn't do the digital transformation. And to close a little bit our conversation, because I think we have like 5 more minutes, I wanted to come back to your Bob initiatives, the employment tool. So how is it working, and what are the stakes here?
Yes. So Bob is, in a nutshell, it is an AI-driven employment advisor.
Okay.
And with Bob, we have been able to coach 250,000 people in France towards employment.
Okay.
And the core idea here is very simple, right? You have a lot of people who are unfortunately unemployed. And one thing we have seen is that a lot of them are often at risk of being left behind because they don't have either a social support system, or they don't have access to a counselor to help them find the right resources, the right advice. So it's not a job board. So Bob is not about matching you with job offers. So there's a lot of tech companies that do this kind of work. For us, it's really about doing this coaching part. For example, for someone who's unemployed, we're going to give them a short questionnaire, and then based on that, we'll give them a personalized coaching plan to say, oh, have you thought about doing this type of training because it could really help boost your chances? Or did you know that this sector was very overcrowded, and that if you were to maybe look into the neighboring town or change your strategy a little bit, you would have much better chances. And everything is AI driven. So we use data from the labor market and also from all the examples of job seekers that we have seen to recommend the solutions we find work the best.
Is it only in France?
Yeah, well, we started in France, and we're starting to scale it to other countries. So we have we just completed a successful pilot in Belgium to launch it there. We're discussing with a few other countries. We're exploring launching it in the United States as well, because I think COVID actually has really outlined the importance of digital. So what we call digital public services. Here, the idea, we started in France that has a really strong public service culture, but the thing in France was that you had a lot of unemployment, and even while pouring billions of euros, it's very analogous to the example you gave of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with malaria. We were pouring billions of euros in providing services to job seekers, but even then we didn't have enough. You had job seekers that had to wait on average between 4 to 6 months before being seen by someone. And so this is why we started by building Bob, so that everyone could get an AI to help get the advice they need when they need it. And then of course, it also helps save time for the counselor after that. So it doesn't replace a human, right? So we started in France, but one thing that we have seen now with COVID is that it's generalizable to a lot of other places. In the United States, where you don't have such a strong public service culture, people are suddenly waking up and realizing, well, we don't want to leave people behind. Also with COVID, it's really difficult to provide face-to-face support. So you can't say, oh, you're unemployed, come into my office. And so I think it is really forcing us to think about new ways to address these problems. And here, this is why digital really has a very important role.
Okay. So our time is nearly over. First, I would like to thank you very much for taking some time on your holidays, because I know it's summer in France. Also, can you please tell us where we can find Connectify for those people who actually are interested in the app and in distributing it, and where you are at in Brazil with Connectify? So you made a partnership with Minha Vida, right? Yes, that's right. So you can access the website either directly on Connectify.org, or we made a version with Minha Vida, so Connectify or minhavida.connectify.org. So I can share the link if you're interested. Perfect. We will distribute it. Thanks again, Paul, for your time, for the very interesting insights, and have a pleasant summer. Take care. As well. Take care. Bye-bye.